Coming up on this episode of the Village Idiom.
You got to go deep.
Deep sea fishing.
If you're at a Kettle-of-Fish party, you've got to get in there.
They should do bobbing for
bobbing for fish flesh.
Dum dum da da. Village Idiom.
Hello and welcome to the Village Idiom.
We are a podcast that every week we choose a popular saying to take an admittedly shallow, hopefully comedic, once in a while interesting, if we're lucky, educational dive into its usage, its meaning, its origins, but mostly we're going to use it to hang our otherwise directionless conversation on. My name is Jurassic Mark.
I'm Time Lapse. I guess it's better than Prolapse.
Time Lapse is not a bad username.
Of all the lapses I could be having right now.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Like a lapse in judgment. That wouldn't be good to have permanently recorded.
But a time lapse.
A time lapse. A prolapse. You know what a prolapse is?
I know the word, but now I can't place its meaning.
I don't know any other usage, but I think it's like when your insides become outsides.
What?
Like you can have I can't personally have, and this is like this is like not, that's G content. It's a prolapsed uterus where your insides become to the outsides.
That's what that means?
A prolapsed.
A displacement of a part or organ of the body from its normal position, usually downward or outward.
Yeah. And then they can tuck that back in and make things okay.
Can they?
Yeah. I think you just need a couple pipe cleaners and a balloon and you're good to go. Boom. So anyways, of all the lapses.
Well, of all the lapses.
At least it's not time lapse.
Collapse.
Relapse. Wow. I don't want any of those lapses.
You know, you can go in for help, and it's like words ending in
lapse,
like for rhyming and songwriting. So I just did that while we were talking. For words ending in lapse,
for a rap music career.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay,
there are only 5.
Did we just use them all?
Yeah.
Okay.
So collapse, prolapse, relapse, elapse, and lapse.
Elapse. I guess that's a digital lapse of sorts.
Yeah.
If that happened, if your podcast spills out onto someone's
Did you
floor.
have a lapse of judgment? Well,
sorry guys.
It was on the internet.
We elapsed. We elapsed in your car radio. I apologize. Just tuck it back into the speakers. Everything will be fine. Well, anyways. I know a bit of a mess after a lapse.
Yeah.
No matter what kind of lapse.
No matter what kind of lapse.
It's an enormous mess.
Or just lapse. It's a mess. And I'm gonna use that as the kicking off point for today's idiom. But I'm also going to tell you that this clip that I'm going to show you comes from what I think is one of the greatest TV shows of all time.
Is it MASH?
It's not MASH.
Okay.
But that's up there. It's this.
Okay.
It's this.
Let's see.
Immortality and infamy are two completely different kettle of fish.
Is that Sybil Shepherd?
Sybil Shepherd in
Moonlighting?
Moonlighting.
That was a good one.
It was...
That was some Bruce
Willis's
sort
of, I don't know if it was actually his debut, but
he had a fantastic. Do you remember Remington Steele?
Totally.
Oh, where's that kind of TV gone, huh?
Right?
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it, but
that's why it's gone.
Maybe that's why it's gone. Maybe you just moved.
But Moonlighting. So in that clip, the idiom du jour is a different kettle of fish.
Different kettle of fish.
But Moonlighting was a different kettle of fish because it was a detective show.
Yes.
With this classic, they should get together, but they never get together.
Romantic undertones.
Yeah. But also
flirty.
Yeah. But they never got together.
No, it would be totally hashtagged Me Too'd in today's TV.
But it also had. Oh man, I wish I could remember the.
She was the boss, right?
Yeah. It also had the actor. He was kind of a bit part in the detective staff. And I can't think of his real name, but he played Booger in Revenge of the Nerds.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
That guy is also in the show.
Ironically, Booger reminds me of the ectoplasmic creature in Ghostbusters in the library.
Just he actually does?
Yeah. And now that I think about it, I'm going to be looking to see if he was played the part. Because he looks like a booger.
Like he looks enough of actually like that ghost or whatever.
Yeah. I wonder if that's actually Booger.
Well, Booger. What is this? What is this guy's name? Because
Booger. Anyways, it's
no. We got to know
it's
now.
Not of key importance.
We do top cast. Let's see. Curtis Armstrong. Wow, I never would have guessed.
I do have a couple of. I want to throw this out there, Village Idiom children, and you can chime in illegitimate children to see if you have kind of some similar vibe. So Kettle-of-Fish runs itself down to like a real this
mess of things,
a messy situation.
This is what I wrote down. This is a different Well, it doesn't have to be messy. It's different from. It's like a messy version of what you were talking about. Like, oh well, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Or a situation can. Well, that's a kettle of fish. Like it's a jumble.
That's a kettle of fish.
Yes,
but a different kettle of fish.
It's not the same kettle of fish.
Right.
Okay.
So we're already talking about a mess. A different kettle of fish is another mess.
Now, I was pondering the subject on why sometimes we don't help people.
Okay.
So there's sometimes situations where you don't insert yourself. And so the feeling was, as I was kind of mulling it over, is sometimes that we don't get involved in messy situations because you can't see it through.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have anything to do with it, period.
Yeah.
Okay. So a friend of mine, a sideways acquaintancy friend, but it was during a seasonal time of year, a little festive, and her car was being messed up and not defrosting. There was a problem with her thermostat. And we had actually been having this conversation about like people helping each other. And
Did you tell her to try parking it in corners?
No.
Because almost all of them are 90 degrees.
I see. That's the stupidest. Okay, so
continue.
That'll be my opinion for next time the situation pops up. Yeah, I know you're icy inside your car. So the windows are all frosted over, and so she's like, you can't get have to get up early in the work, and I'm freezing inside, and da. And I'm like, you know what? I can just pop this over to like a mechanic friend, and I'm sure it just replace the thermostat. It's going to cost $200-300. And she's like, well, actually, I had a radiator flush just a couple months back, and maybe do you think that's got something to do with it? I'm like, I don't know, but this probably something that we can just take care of. And so I grab her keys, take it over to the mechanic's place, and I proceed without asking her if it's okay to fix.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get this taken care of. It's going to be a couple $100 and whatever. Like, just, it's a nice thing. It's a
like you're
festive
paying
time
for it?
Yeah. It's just going to be this nice time of year. I wasn't planning on paying for it. This is where the story goes though.
Oh, okay.
And so I bring back, I'm like, okay, your car is all fixed. He's like, oh, like, that's great. I actually just called the mechanics who did the radiator flush, and he says, if there's a problem, that's something that they did, then they'll take care of it, and that there won't be any charges for any of that if that's something. And then it was like, now I'm in this spot where I took it with the best of intentions, trying to do something nice for somebody.
Yeah.
That was just like above and beyond. They're like, I can't get out in the middle of the day. My work doesn't allow whatever, blah blah. I'm like, I'll just take care of this as a nicety. And then it turned out to cost me a couple $100 for something that.
But didn't she?
And now I'm inserted myself into the situation where moving forward, if there's a problem in this area.
Oh.
Because you took it to the mechanic with the thing and the stuff.
But the flusher would have.
Yeah, and so now I've like.
Yeah.
And so.
Please nothing go wrong. Please nothing go wrong.
Yeah, so I'm like, this is why people don't help.
Yeah, right.
You're like, why do something nice? Why do anything? Why insert yourself at all? Why stick your neck out? Well, because it's just like rolling down the road hassles.
Yeah, and not to mention and that's doing something physical, but that can play into even giving somebody advice. Well, you told me to do that, or not to do that, or whatever.
Being very careful of this.
Yeah, It's like I was just talking,
Or advice that's sound. Like there's times like people have asked like, what's your financial opinion on something? And as a generalization, don't bury yourself in debt. This is a good general rule. Don't bury yourself in debt. Okay, so if selling this thing will help get me out of debt, what do you think about that? I'm like, I'm not a big fan of the debt. And if, yes, that would be my thoughts on it. Well, then the situation changed, and then the markets changed, and then they couldn't get back into what they were doing. And I'm like, it was sound advice that just shut up, don't say anything, don't offer any opinions, don't engage anybody over anything.
Well,
And I hate that.
On a different subject, on the same page of what you're saying. Like, I have a coworker who just wears his heart on his sleeve. Like, he's the nicest guy on the planet. And where our office is, not every day, but there's regular enough to say it's all the time. There's the unhoused that come around that neighborhood. And so you're always like going.
You're just saying there's homeless everywhere.
Yeah, I don't use that term.
I see. Everywhere? Yeah. Like all
Gabriel
over the place.
Iglesias said not to use the term homeless.
Is that like a relative of Julio?
No.
Okay.
Gabriel Fluffy. You don't know Gabriel Iglesias?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's this homeless person outside of our office, and this lady. This is just this week, and he's super kind. We happen to be in the car together. We're both going in. He's like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" "Oh, actually, I'm not okay." "Oh, tell me what's going on. How can I help?" And I kept walking. So 2 different approaches to this, right? I'm what you're talking about. I'm like, oh, don't get involved because I'm not going to be able to follow through with this person. Like, depending on what comes out of her mouth next, like if it's like, I need a pair of gloves, I might have been able to help.
Right. We can go into the thrift store or whatever. We can get you some.
So he's talking with her, and I go inside, and I'm like, he's handling it. And to be fair, I'll just throw this out there. I've helped numerous times the guys that are hanging around that office, like in different scenarios. You do what you can in the moment, and but so he comes in after about 10 minutes, and I hear him come in, lock the door behind him, and again, this guy who doesn't say a bad word about anyone, you just hear him go, well, she was weird. I just chuckled to myself. Best intentions. Whatever their conversation was, he tried.
Because sometimes it's a real mess of a situation and you're like, that's a kettle of fish. That's a different kettle of fish.
There's exactly. So
it's I've got that way with like I was at one point I was like pretty tech savvy, and so I became the de facto computer person in my peers and etc. And then your parents, and then your parents' friends, and then it just starts to get out there. And I just said, so I had one incident where I was helping a person, some challenges with their drive, and then this went out and and it was just a total cluster cuss.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? I was just trying to be nice and help out, and I'm like, now I just steer clear of it all.
Yeah.
I don't like that, but sometimes stuff can just turn into such a different kettle of fish that you're like, I'm
helping you is one thing. Helping everybody and their dog is a whole different kettle of fish.
It's a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah.
We're going to get into origins in a little while, but excuse me. That was a whole kettle of fish right there. But a kettle of fish, even, a lot of our idioms come from a literal meaning, and perhaps we'll find out this does, but a kettle of fish. Like, have you ever in your home while making dinner had a kettle of fish on the stove?
Tea.
Oh, fish tea. A kettle of fish, though. Isn't that interesting? Like,
it can't be what we're thinking of in terms of kettle.
That's all I'm saying.
I did come. Okay, so because we were looking up kettle of fish, this struck me interesting. Illegitimate children. Okay,
that's what it should be called for. Like when there's more than one fish, when there's a group of fish, not school. It should be kettle.
A kettle of fish.
Yeah.
If there,
how many fish were there?
Problematic.
There was like a kettle of fish.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, so I was looking up, and then kettle related items popped up.
That's a thing. Kettle related items.
Okay. And then the phrase "pot calling the kettle black," which is a different idiom.
I think we've. Wow, that's ringing bells. Have we done that one?
I don't know. We're in like what are we at? What are we at? 312.
312.
Okay.
We're supposed to be the experts on the origins of idioms, but if it's one we've done, as soon as we're done,
it better not have happened last week because we can't remember. Okay, so this popped up, and I was like, I've never heard this as a possibility. Okay, so the pot calling the kettle black.
Sure.
And that there being two differing perspectives on what idiomatic that means.
Okay.
Okay, so either the kettle is black,
right,
and so it's the pot calling the kettle black, which is what it is itself. A pot that's like maybe a cast iron or something, that also black, calling a blackened, whether by char or by cast iron, this kettle black. Or the kettle is so shiny, all it does is reflect the pot.
Okay. Now that you say that, we've done this.
Have we?
Yeah, for sure. Like now that you say that, I'm like, yep, I remember this coming up.
Okay, because I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is crazy. Yeah, so the pot calling the kettle black, that it was, it could be on both sides of like, so either it itself was black or it was just reflecting back what the other thing is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I always thought the pot calling the kettle black was because they're both, again, we probably covered all of this in our actual episode. But I thought it was because they both hovered over the fire and were turning black. So it's like, first take the plank out of your own eye kind of situation.
Or that the one is just reflecting the other.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
It could be.
Yeah, which is entirely different. Anyways, not a thing about what we're talking about today.
I think that's
a different kettle of fish.
That'd be the pot calling the kettle black, but the pot is shiny or the kettle is?
The kettle is shiny. So the pot is
black.
black.
So it's seeing itself.
It's seeing itself.
Yeah.
When that happens. Yeah. So, very different scenario.
Yeah.
But whether it's, regardless, it has nothing to do with being in a kettle of fish.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
True.
You would pretty much want to make sure you never use that kettle for other things. If it was a kettle of fish.
Again, if you've ever had a kettle of fish, that's all that kettle is for now.
That's the fish kettle.
That's the fish kettle.
Because they're stinky. And so you wouldn't want to be like, oh, this tomato soup has just a little something to it.
Did this used to be your...
Was this the fish kettle?
Was this the fish kettle?
I can't tell. There's a little something on this.
That was a year ago I had a kettle of fish.
I've cooked so many things in the meantime.
So frustrating.
Yeah.
Every kettle of fish chef's story, sadly.
Or that you're just so opulent that you have a kettle just dedicated to every single type of protein.
Right.
Yeah, this is the sausage kettle.
Well, I also assume that a fish kettle or any kettle or anything in a kettle is being boiled. Like, and I know you can boil fish, but I think of fish as fried. Like boiled fish.
Broiled.
Yeah.
Seared.
Correct.
Deep fried. Baked.
Baked.
But not boiled. That pretty much makes soup, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you boil the fish, you're getting soup.
That's a whole different kettle of fish.
It's such a tender meat. People
That-
don't talk about it.
The way you said that, it's such a tender meat.
It's succulent.
Oh, let's get into
It's
it. You
very
want to get
supple.
into it?
It's a supple.
It's a supple.
It's a supple flesh of an animal.
All of these are good T-shirts.
The supple flesh of an animal. Have you heard them? Their new album is so good.
That's more of an
Anyways,
album title.
I see.
By Kettle of Fish.
I see. Supple flesh by Kettle of Fish.
Yeah. Supple flesh of an animal by Kettle of Fish.
Well, we should probably find out where it really comes from.
That's all I'm saying. Let's keep on going.
I said some words, where'd they go? Where'd they go? No one can know. I turned around and looked behind. Those words came from another mind. Origin.
So here's the deal. I hinted at the boiling of fish, and before I even get into the origin story, there is a simplified version of where the origins could have come from, which is exactly that. It's just that. So when we hear kettle, we think of teapot.
Yes.
But kettle in Old English, not even that long ago, could mean any pot. Like you have a pot, like picture a witch's cauldron, that's a kettle. Picture a pot on the stove, that's a kettle. So a kettle could mean anything that's over.
What about a saucepan?
Yeah, maybe not flat like that, but like a...
Is there a height at which it becomes a kettle?
That's a good question. I mean, a kettlebell looks less like a teapot than a cauldron.
Well, it kind of looks like a teapot.
That's all I meant. Okay to handle.
Well,
And it's
yeah.
short and stout.
Yeah.
And when you tip it over.
Something like that, anyway.
So different kettle of fish just means a different matter from the one previously mentioned. More specifically, this is a different mess. And And so there's actually two kind of common idioms based around the phrase kettle of fish. One is what we're talking about, which is this is a different kettle of fish. And the other one is a fine kettle of fish.
That popped up frequently.
Yeah, so this is a fine kettle of fish, which reminds me of old Laurel and Hardy. I think it was Laurel and Hardy that was, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into. And so, just in both cases, it doubles down on kettle of fish, those three words meaning it's a mess. It is a problem. And a different kettle of fish is just a different problem than the one we were talking about. A fine kettle of fish is just putting that sort of ironic shine on a mess. Oh, this is a fine mess. This is a fine kettle of fish. So either way, an awkward something has arisen. There's a kettle of fish. The latter is much older. So the fine kettle of fish is actually older than a different kettle of fish, and it dates back to the 18th century. A different kettle of fish is only 19th century, and they both come from just simply kettle of fish. So to be fair, nobody knows for sure, even though there's more info than some of our previous podcasts. Nobody really knows 100% where this expression came from, but we do know that kettle of fish could have come from a literal term. Mm-hmm. So in Britain, in the Commonwealth countries, even today, they think of kettle as a small closed container with a handle. So do we here in Canada, to boil water to make tea. But in the 18th century, a kettle, like I said, could be any large vessel. So I am curious, as saucepan to kettle, where the line is drawn. Does it have to slope inwards?
I think it must.
As soon as it starts to go
if it
inwards,
flares out, it's a wok, isn't it, or something?
That's
right.
I think we just solved the problem.
Is a waka a waka?
Is a waka fish? I mean, a kettle.
Is a waka kettle?
So there was, it seems, a custom by which this is the one thing that came up a lot. There was a custom by which the gentry on the Scottish border with England would hold a picnic by a river. Some sort of tradition. The custom was described by Thomas Newt in his tour of England and Scotland.
What's his name?
Thomas Newt. Not Newton.
Like Snoot?
Thomas Newt.
Thomas Newt.
Thomas Newt.
Okay. His name's Newt?
Newt.
Interesting.
Newte.
Because often, isn't that like
it
last
could be
names?
Newte.
Isn't last names often part of like a profession or something?
Yeah, so he boiled lizards.
He was a lizard. He
was a lizard.
He bred lizards.
And was turned into a man.
I see. That makes sense.
Anyway, Thomas Newt, in his tour of England and Scotland in 1785, said this, and I quote, "It is customary for the gentlemen who live near the Tweed to entertain their neighbors and friends with a fête champêtre." Fête champêtre. That's French for party. Wait, bon fête.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, right? So fête.
Bon is good.
So fête is celebration, I guess. Anyway, they called giving a
like
kettle
with confetti.
They called giving
With
a kettle of fish.
Okay.
This little tradition by the river. They called it a kettle of fish. So tents or marquees are pitched near the banks of the river. A fire is lit and live salmon thrown into the boiling kettles. So
So this was a thing, but
modified his quote, but that was all Thomas Newt right there.
Thomas Newt wrote about this, and he was the first.
Yeah, so live salmon thrown into the kettles from the river, and it was a kettle of fish. Now, what's interesting, as we've kind of hinted at, that if you want to just be literal about it, if you boil fish, the supple flesh of an animal, it's a mess. It's not like boiling a chicken breast.
Right.
Like it's going to turn into just these weird chunks of mixtured.
Yeah. It's going to
whatever.
break apart.
If it's live salmon, the skin's going to separate.
Right.
All these kinds of things. So it was a messy dish if they indeed did do this. So while all of that sounds like a terrible meal.
And Village Idiom children, if you're ever invited to a kettle of fish, scoop to the bottom of the pot. You're guaranteed a more hearty, rounded meal as opposed to just the broth. Just a little word from the wise there. Okay, continue.
All right. So in Captain Francis Gross's Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue, is that the one we have? Is that the one you gave me for Christmas?
It is.
Yeah, the Vulgar Tongue, 1811. It's explained like this. And again, I quote, when a person has perplexed his affairs in general or any particular business, he is said to have made a fine kettle of fish of it. And a little later, Thomas Chandler Halliburton of Nova Scotia used it the same way in his clockmaker. There's an end to the clock trade now and a pretty kettle of fish, so that's even different. It's not different or fine. It's a pretty kettle of fish I've made of it, haven't I? I shall never hear the last on it. So it goes way back. In June 1847, in the Advertiser, in plain English, a master is responsible for the acts of his servants, and he must either be sent to the right about by the railway authorities hereafter or boil a very different kettle of fish.
So a common mistake when people go to a kettle of fish, and this is why I'm passionate about this. You're tempting to like, oh, I'll have a taste of that, and you get a little spoonful from the top. You're not even getting the good stuff.
No,
because
go deep.
You got to go deep.
Deep sea fishing.
If you're at a kettle of fish party, you've got to get in there.
They should do bobbing for
bobbing for fish flesh. That's so gross. I got one. It's a head. Ew.
Okay, last bit of info because it's interesting. There's one argument out there about everything we've talked about so far.
Okay.
So the previous explanation is entirely plausible and is what most people believe as the source of the phrase of a kettle of fish or a different kettle of fish or a fine kettle of fish. However, here's another actually long-standing theory which might be the source of the phrase, and it's the word kiddle. Kiddle. Kiddles are barriers or in rivers, like a net, in rivers to catch fish. So kiddle nets are a part of that apparatus to catch fish in rivers. So kiddles have been in use and with that name since the 13th century, and are even referred to in the Magna Carta of 1215. It says, I'm not going to read that. It translates as all weirs then removed altogether from Thames and Medway and throughout England except along the sea. But it has to do... Oh, cut it off here. In 1670, Thomas Blount published his law dictionary, which includes this: kiddle, 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 Kidel, or kettle, Kedel. Some fishermen corruptly call them kettles, Kettles. And Ebenezer Brewer believed that a kettle of fish originated as a kiddle of fish, so a kettle of fish could just mean a net of fish.
Interesting.
So
who's the guy?
There is that out there.
Is the guy who repaired it a fiddler? I don't know. I'm just making.
Yeah.
Is he? Is he messing around with the nets? That guy's messing around with the nets.
He's a
kiddler fiddler.
Kiddle fiddler.
So a net full
what if
of
it's
fish.
a tiny one? Then it's just a little kiddle fiddler.
He's just a little one.
It's a little kiddle fiddler.
So if there was I like this. If that was on Balderdash, you'd have got me.
Right. I should have given you the options.
Yeah, because if it's like, oh, it's a fish net, because then you're like, oh, it's a net full of fish, which makes complete sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is...
As opposed to a kettle, which...
If not for this Scottish actual custom, that was called putting on a kettle of fish.
But it could still be like a kettle. Like,
but
it could be
they were actually putting on a kettle of fish.
But we're going to take a net full of fish and cook it.
No, but that was a real thing. They had a pot with fish, live salmon thrown into a pot. But that doesn't mean that's where the idiom came
Where did they
from.
get the salmon? From a net?
From the kettle.
Yes.
They took the salmon from the kettle and put it in the kettle.
Right.
Yeah, right in front of the cattle. Who didn't get a single bite.
Not even a little bittle? Oh, no. They're not pescatarian.
They gave a small little tidbit to the pet poodle. Little kittle. A little bit of the kittle in the kettle to the poodle in front of the cattle.
And now it's just called kibble. So they gave some kibble to the poodle.
What are you doing while you're waiting for your kittle from the kettle? I'm just going to whittle.
I'm going to whittle a little.
What are you going to whittle?
A poodle. A poodle who's piddling.
Oh,
a piddling poodle.
A piddling poodle. I'm going to whittle while I wait for the kettle of kittle.
You sound very Pentecostal right now. Amen.
Anyway.
Well, that's enough idiocy for the moment.
This is the Village Idiom.
This sounds like Snoop Dogg when you do it.
Just add iddle to everything.
The viddle.
This is the Viddle Iddle.
Yeah, it's like a Snoop Dogg, but for
Now
fish.
all the Viddle Iddle chittle.
Yeah.
We're literally about to play riddle.
The riddle on the viddle iddle.
The riddle iddle.
Wow. That is a different kettle of fish. Well, we should probably wrap this baby up.
All right. Well, first, riddle little is a giddle we like to piddle. That uses a 2-part trivia-based quiddle and requires a 2-part but over little answer. It could overlap by syllable, word, or word. So, for example, last week,
A syllabiddle.
just last whittle, we, in our idiom, cat's pajamas, we left you with this little diddle. Okay, here's how it went. This is what killed the cat and what a lot of guys wear as a pajama top. This is what killed the cat and what a lot of guys wear as a pajama top. Can you figure that one out?
I'm going to go with Curiosity t-shirt.
That's it. It's not curiosity. It's not t-shirt. Correct answer, if you want to play riddle little, is
Curatizzle.
curiosity
Curatiddle.
t-shirt. Iddle.
Yeah. Well,
That's how you play riddling.
You got to be careful on that last one. Okay, well, I've got 2 prepared.
I got 2 prepared.
2 per piddle. Here we go.
Here we go.
This pot of Piscine idiom is like an English food with tartar sauce.
One more time.
This pot of Piscine idiom is like an English food with tartar sauce.
Well, that's got to be the classic kettle of fish and chips.
it is.
Nice. Nicely done.
A net full.
A net full.
A net fiddle.
All right, here's one for you. I hope you get this one. This is like Amazon Women on the Moon. You either know it or you don't.
Okay.
That's not even the same thing. That's Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman in a songwriting movie. That's not even the same thing. That's a Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman songwriting movie.
The only thing that comes up, which I'm just going to throw it out there, different kettle of fish called Wanda.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I thought you had it. Different kettle. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Different kettle of fish tar.
Oh, fish tar.
Ishtar.
Okay. Ishtar. Yeah. Fish called Wanda. That would have been good.
You know,
I
when
don't know how you describe
Waterworld
that.
with Kevin Costner came out, and it was such a bomb in the theater.
Yeah.
And previous to that, Ishtar was considered the worst movie ever made, even though I loved it. They began calling Waterworld Fish Tar.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts a little bit. Okay. This is a little more left fieldy as well.
Okay.
You'll know or you won't know.
Okay, sounds good.
This current longest serving Supreme Court justice
Oh my.
wrote Kettle of Fish in 1785. This current longest serving Supreme Court justice wrote Kettle of Fish in 1785.
Have we talked about the author of Kettle of Fish? Or do I just need to know that?
You know who wrote it.
I do.
Yeah, we went over.
Are we literally talking about Clarence Thomas Newt? No way.
Yes, we
Oh,
are.
wow. That's great. Okay, nicely done.
There you go. You pulled it out of the air.
That's why you doubled down on his name.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm like, how am I supposed to get this?
I'm like, he knows.
That's great.
He knows.
So were
He
you,
knows.
did you know I was going to bring him up or figured I would?
I was begging. I'm like, please bring this up or this is really going to be awkward.
All right, well, I got one more. Why don't you tell everybody how they can pliddle a little?
Village Idiom. You can reach out to us on Instiddle at the Village Idiom. Nope, at the.village.diddle. Nope, at
We're going to get
the.village.idiom.
no mail this week.
Or email us thevillageidiompodcast@gmail.diddle. Or whether it's the Facebook, the YouTubes, or the Xziddle at 3middlegiddle.
Wow, that was a great ending. Okay, here it is. Last one. You'll for sure get this one. This is a barbecue starting block of coal, but it is an entirely unrelated thing. This is a barbecue starting block of coal, but it's an entirely unrelated thing.
And that is 3 minutes gone.
You got that one right? Mm-mm. No?
No, I think I know half, and I can work on the other half.
All right.
Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Okay. Well, it was fun putting today's episode together.
I loved it.
Hope you have a great week. I'm Skinny,
I'm Jurassic Middle.
and these are the Village in adults.
It's the kettle of fish tonight. And last 3 minutes gone.